پارلمان انگلستان. اجلاس پارلمانی درباره جنایت علیه بشریت در اشرف از سوی کمیته بریتانیایی پارلمانی برای ایران آزاد با حمایت اکثریت مجلس عوام و بیش از 200 عضو مجلس عیان. لندن، 13 سپتامبر 2013. فراخوان اعضای هر دو مجلس انگلستان به آزادی فوری 7 گروگان اشرفی توسط دولت عراق، محکومیت قتل عام وحشیانه اول سپتامبر، ضرورت تحقیق کامل و مستقل و سپردن مسئولان این جنایت به دست عدالت. فراخوان به استقرار نیروهای کلاه آبی سازمان ملل در لیبرتی برای تضمین حفاظت و امنیت ساکنان.
Thank you. Sir Alan Neil.
Thank you very much indeed. I come here today outraged at what has really happened. Yet another very, very tragic and sad day for the world, where we have seen the murder and the assassination of 52 people and the abduction of many more still held, and quite wrongly so. It goes on and on and on and on. It is time for us to actually stand up internationally and say to people, it can't go on any longer. Now, I call on the international community to come together to report the people responsible for this and to take them to the International Court in The Hague. No longer can we stand idly by and allow this to continue. And governments of whatever political persuasion must come forward and halt all this genocide on free people. It is time to say the end is nigh and the Middle East has to be sorted out. We can't just say there are other problems elsewhere. We have to say we have to change our international attitude and approach to what needs to be done. And the sooner it happens, the better.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, in the early hours of the 1st of September 2013, assassins and butchers from the Iraqi military apparatus launched a military assault on Camp Ashraf. You've now just watched the video. The attack was launched with the sole aim of hunting and annihilating the 100 women and men remaining in Camp Ashraf. In an act of sheer barbarity, these savages murdered in cold blood 52 unarmed women and men. Some, as we've just seen, had their arms tied behind their backs before being summarily executed with a bullet to the head. Others, as I've said, were slaughtered in the medical centre in Camp Ashraf, to which they went in order to receive medical treatment for their terrible wounds. 7 residents were taken hostage, 6 of them being women, and their fate is still unknown. Ladies and gentlemen, how much longer will the world watch and remain silent as these ghastly scenes unfold in Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty? When we see the scenes of assassins and butchers from the Iraqi security forces executing the people of Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty. Words of condemnation and condolences from the international community, much as they are welcome, are cheap in what they actually achieve. We need now to take immediate action to stop any further atrocities. So let's explore who these 52 individuals were and what they were doing in Camp Ashraf. In the words of our good friend, the late Lord Corbett of Castle Vale, they were the bravest of the brave. The 52 lives who were so viciously taken away had sacrificed everything and spent their whole lives struggling for the basic rights and freedoms of their people. They were principled, strong and tenacious people who were prepared not to bow to tyranny and oppression. They have now made the ultimate sacrifice by giving their lives in the struggle against oppression. Ladies and gentlemen, we, in this mother of all parliaments, could take a real lesson from what has happened. So the residents of Camp Ashraf, as we all know, should have been protected by international law. They are protected people under the 4th Geneva Convention, as well as being recognised by the UNHCR as asylum seekers and persons of concern. Moreover, ladies and gentlemen, they were actually in Camp Ashraf as part of the legally binding quadripartite agreement between the Iraqi government, United Nations, United States and residents of Camp Ashraf and Liberty. And it was agreed that they would remain in Camp Ashraf to oversee the sale of the residents' possessions. The 42 Ashraf residents who survived the attack are indeed witnesses to the atrocities which have been carried out. They must be protected from international law in order that they can give evidence against the perpetrators of these crimes. At the same time, ladies and gentlemen, there are very, very serious shortcomings in the security situation of the 3,000 or so residents of Camp Liberty, who, as we see, are on hunger strike in protest. We must therefore unite as a group and insist on the following measures being adopted by the world community. Immediate release of the 7 hostages. Stationing a United Nations unit of blue helmets under the presence of a US monitoring team inside Camp Liberty on a 24/7 basis. Furthermore, we should provide urgent protection requirements at Camp Liberty, including double-layered roofs for the trailers returning the T-walls, concrete bunkers, etc., and arrangements must be made for the sale of the movable and immovable property in Ashraf through the United Nations and the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to finish with these thoughts before handing over to others. Giving orders to its agents in Iraq to attack Camp Ashraf was a huge sign of weakness from the Iranian regime, whose economy, ladies and gentlemen, is in tatters. They're isolated, and whose most senior officials are involved in open factional infighting, and is a regime that is about to lose what it describes as its 35th state, Syria. It also illustrates the extent to which the Iranian regime fears the Iranian resistance. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the international community to completely isolate this regime and redouble its efforts to apply wide-ranging sanctions, thereby creating the circumstances for the Iranian people and their democratic resistance to topple the regime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, all friends. Let me say one thing. I would like to state to you the facts and realities on the ground. I will not make any value judgments. I'll leave it to you to draw your own conclusions. The reality about Camp Ashraf is hermetically sealed. Nobody could penetrate Camp Ashraf without the active participation of the Iraqi security forces. In the east, south of Lionsgate, you have the base for the HQ of the army in Ashraf, and you have the police. Inside Ashraf, there is a police station, which was allegedly the reason for the attack of April 2011. Before, when I used to visit Ashraf, before landing, we hover around the camp. And we see the installations and we see the movements on the ground before we land. And I could tell you, not even a fox could cross inside the camp without being detected by the Iraqi army and the police. So, as I experienced on the 8th of April 2011, I was in the lead of taking the fact-finding mission on the ground. And before I went to Ashraf, early in the morning on Friday 2011, 8th of April 2011, I went to the house of the National Security Advisor, who is the chair of Ashraf Committee. He is responsible about all actions related to Ashraf. National Security Advisor Falah Fayyad. I begged him to immediately stop the attack of 8 April. I told him 8 in the morning, I was already aware that 17 people were already killed. His reply, face to face to me, he told me, stop spreading rumors. There is nothing happening. I said to him, okay, if there is nothing happening, can I visit right now? Can I take the helicopter and go to Ashraf? He said, no, you can't. I explained to him, it's in the interest of the Iraqi government to let me go. Because if nothing is happening, I will kill these rumors, I will come back and say nothing happened. He said, no, you can't go. Eventually, I managed to go on the 13th of April, 2011. And till the last minute, before I walked into the camp, I spoke to the doctor of Ashraf, Dr. Omar. I said to him, please tell me what happened. Again, the Iraqi doctor at Camp Ashraf told me nothing happened. And I was away, 500 meters away from 28 bodies. Why I'm telling you this? I'm telling you this because from my experience, I know that nothing could happen in Ashraf without the direct participation of the Iraqi army and police. And I also know from the experience that the government of Iraq has deliberately planned well in advance the operation. And I could tell you, the orders were taken by the government of Iraq, and I specify, it's the Ashraf Committee, chaired by the National Security Advisor Falah Fayyad. This is a serious allegation I'm making. But I'm telling you, from my experience on the ground, from my interaction with the Prime Minister's office, and from what they told me themselves. The day I confronted Falah Fayyad with my report and the pictures of the Ashrafis being slaughtered, he finally told me, we will investigate it, but not on your terms, according to our terms. And they did the investigation, according to their terms. They brought some weapons, put them on a table, took a picture of those weapons, and they presented to me and to the diplomatic community. They presented those pictures as evidence that it was the Ashrafis who killed each other. I said to them directly, please do not distribute this report because it will undermine your credibility. It will undermine the credibility of the government of Iraq. It's not in your interest to make this sort of simplify the situation this way. No matter. The massacre of April 2011, which we learned a lot from it, I reported it. But I was not allowed to get the message out of Iraq. I had to smuggle, in a way, in an irregular manner, the report to Geneva. And once it reached Geneva, it was made public. And I'm saying this just to raise a question mark about the impartiality of UNAMI. I'm sorry to say, without targeting any individual, UNAMI will not be impartial. Why? Regardless of what happened during the period of the previous SRG, the structure of UNAMI itself does not allow it to be impartial. How things are done in UNAMI. There are two institutions in UNAMI which are closely linked to the security system of the government of Iraq. Namely, an organization called POLAD. It's the police advisors to UNAMI, led by an Iraqi colonel. So POLAD advises UNAMI on every issue that is related to policing. Second institution is MILAD. Those military advisors to UNAMI are again officers of, some of them, officers of the former coalition that led the war in Iraq. But MILAD conducts its briefing together with the chief of staff of the Iraqi army in Baghdad. So, on the ground, there is nothing that happens without the contribution of MILAD and POLAD. And when you say MILAD and POLAD, meaning the Iraqi security apparatus. Now, when we call on UNAMI to investigate, I could tell this House that there is no way for MILAD to produce an independent, impartial, transparent report. What we would like to see is a real independent, impartial party to come in to investigate this situation. The massacre of 52, the way we saw them on these clips, by all criteria, are a crime against humanity. And we will not allow a system of the United Nations to come sort of water down the situation and makes it a sort of an incident, a regrettable incident, I would say. This is not a regrettable incident. This is a planned, premeditated, crime committed against protected persons, I would call on the NGOs to verify what I'm saying on the ground. I would also call on the diplomatic missions in Baghdad, who I used to brief on human rights issues every other week in Baghdad. I will call on them to look at the matter on the ground, because a lot of diplomatic missions hide behind UNAMI. Everybody say we support what UNAMI does. But they too know that UNAMI cannot be independent in its work. And they are in Baghdad to support the government of Iraq. If they fail to do so, their mandate will be terminated. That is Resolution 1770 of the Security Council. In these circumstances, we cannot rely on UNAMI to produce an independent, impartial report. We cannot rely on the whole UN system to investigate this incident. We want a truly independent, impartial organization to look into this matter, because we are witnessing, we are seeing crimes against humanity, unless the international community takes this matter seriously and acts to stop it. I thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I come here with a very heavy heart, because I think of, and I think we've got those of us who are parliamentarians, whether here or in the United States or in the various European parliaments, have got to feel some responsibility for what has happened. Insofar, not that we haven't raised the issue with our governments again and again and again, but insofar as we have allowed what Tahar has very clearly illustrated, we have allowed the manipulation of governmental bodies to downplay the truth of what we have tried to communicate to our government, to our Department of Foreign Affairs. I, just last night, looked at questions, just questions that I had asked over the last year or so. I have 9 A4 sheets. In parliamentary time, it's fairly hard to, it's really quite hard to get in. So you'll understand that 9 pages over the last year on my own initiation, plus all the efforts that have been made by Lord Clark, Lord Avebury, and many others. I won't try to, Baroness Turner, and I won't try to name them all. But we have made an effort only to be sort of almost told, calm down, dear. Yes. It's not really as bad as that. Well, this time, I actually was surprised. I've been involved with the Foreign Office every single day. I've been talking to the Foreign Office every single day since this horrific incident occurred. And I've got to say that at last, somebody's listening. At last, somebody's listening. They know. But that's this week's news. Next week, they may not be listening unless we, and I'm talking now, you and I, ladies and gentlemen, unless we organise ourselves. Let me pick up, I think, where Tahar was taking us, and that is to ask the question, is the United Nations, are the United Nations competent to do the job that is required from them and by them in Ashraf and liberty? The answer is no. Let's start with those poor ladies and the gentlemen who have been kidnapped and who will be extra. Iraq knows that we know they're lying, but they'll maintain that lie by saying, no, we don't know who these people are, we don't have them, and the next thing will be in the hands of the mullahs. Try to save the lives of the 8 hostages. That is our primary task. Our next task is, and we know the limitations of UNAMI, but they're there. And we've got to somehow insist that they are established in the camp for troops there, detached from Nouri al-Maliki's office, in Camp Liberty, ensuring that UNAMI have the freedom. Nothing will embarrass the Iraqi government unless we can prevail on our government and the American government to prevail on the United Nations, who've been tardy in everything they've done, to ensure that we have people on the ground. If the Iraqi government wants to prove anything, in retrospect, they have got to facilitate these demands. And we mustn't let those who have given their lives, those who have been leaders, including Mrs. Rajavi, those who have spelt out the way forward in terms of Iranian resistance in totally democratic terms. Never forget that. This organisation has spelt out in absolute democratic terms. Each and every one of you, join me. Keep up the pressure. It's from reasoned argument, from consistent pressure, that we would hope to make headway. You know what we need? We need blueberries. First of all, we need to have rescued our 7 hostages. So there it is. We have failed them. We must start winning a just battle for those who remain. God bless you.
Thank you very much, my Lord. We are completely shocked over the horrible event which took place in the early morning of 1st of September. And it was special for me after I learned and saw the faces of the victims. And I understood that I had several friends amongst the victims, people I really learned to get to know during my visit there with my wife in the summer of 2005. So many of my friends died. And my heart goes out especially to the loved ones of the victims, the family members, all those who love these victims, but especially those 42 survivors. You are heroes. And I'm really admiring those people with such a perseverance. And I think that is what is needed, perseverance, in order to reach the goal. And I'm very impressed of what I've seen. And actually my wife was so impressed after 1 week in اشرف that she came one evening and told me that she had decided to stay. She said, "You can go home, I want to be here." And she really meant it. She was crying when we had to leave, because it was this enormous love that she felt from early morning till late night, and she felt it was a completely different atmosphere than she had ever experienced. So she was crying, and then she came with me. But I'm telling this to say that we experienced an enormous love and solidarity between all the members that we met with. And it's really horrible to see that how can they be executed. And we know that there is a war going on now with the intelligence service, the Ministry of Intelligence in Iran, trying to pollute the minds of powerful people in Western Europe. Maybe what made the most impression on me was to see the pictures from the medical center, to see that actually they had first shot them and didn't manage to kill, and then they went into the medical treatment room and actually assassinated the people in the beds. It's a very serious crime against humanity, and of course a very strong need for an impartial investigation. So my thoughts is going about 10 years back. In March 2003, President George Bush visited London, and he was here in a state dinner with Queen Elizabeth II, and he said, "We attacked Iraq in order to introduce more democracy in the Middle East." Where is the democracy? And look at probably the most powerful military coalition in the world between US and UK, how they sent 130,000 troops to Iraq, showing really a massive power. And compare it with all the Western foreign ministries today. They are just asking the Iraqi government, please, will you investigate this? We never asked those who are a suspect to investigate a criminal act. And this is what we saw in all the statements coming out of the foreign offices and foreign ministries all over the world. They were appealing to the Iraqi government to investigate this. And we know that we now have hard evidence. We have technical evidence that the Iraqi government was behind this, together with the Iranian government. And UNAMI is also a suspect. So neither UNAMI nor the Iraqi government should be part of any investigation. They are the suspects in this. The criminals are being asked to investigate their crimes. And this is so shocking that we can see this, and I really hope that that we can see a change in the corridors of power here in London, in Washington DC, and in other capitals of Europe. It's really disturbing to me that we have not seen so far an independent investigation, but my admiration goes out to Mr. Tahar Boumedra for what he has done. It has been it has been such an encouragement for me after all these years where I've been involved in in the fight for human rights many places, and to see that there is actually one person here who thinks more about the truth, the main values in the United Nations Charter, and the rule of law. And I'm also very thankful to each one of you who are now on the hunger strike. It's very impressive. I want to thank each one of you for what you are doing to stand up for the world, to show the injustice and demonstrate against the horrible things which have taken place. And finally, I would like to say again thank you to each one of you, the 42 survivors. Thank you for your courage and your perseverance. And we especially think of the 7 hostages and how they can be saved. We all have a responsibility to do our utmost to secure their safety and their lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Massacre in Camp Ashraf. 52 people were killed, 38 people were injured, and 7 people were taken hostage. Of those 7 people, 6 were women. They have been taken hostage and they are being held near Baghdad. It is vitally important that they are treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention and with international law. They must be protected and their release must be immediate. The attack on Camp Ashraf on the 1st of September, in which 52 people died, was a massacre. It was an inhuman and terrible situation. It is to be absolutely condemned by all right-thinking people. And I am calling today on the United Nations, the United States, and on the government here in the United Kingdom to do all they can to ensure that a proper investigation occurs of what happened in Camp Ashraf on the 1st of September.
The world should not keep silent. They must strongly condemn it, but the next step, it needs to be coupled with proper actions. People in the strategic centers must know that the way to deal with true terrorists, true dictators, is not to cover up, is not to whitewash, is not to keep silent, but it's totally the opposite way around. And the world must listen. Otherwise, we will get to a point that no one else would be left to cry for justice, to cry for freedom and democracy. We need your voices to pressure Maliki that we know his special units and forces are at the moment taking and abducting 7 of the residents, 6 of them women, in their hands. It is in the hands of those special units. They must be immediately released. It is not only a violation of non-refoulement principle, a very clear principle in the international law that genuine opposition movement must not be extradited back to their dictatorial government. Otherwise, they would ultimately and definitely face torture and execution. Please, we need to see safety and security guaranteed in Camp Liberty. The Iranian regime is engulfed in crisis. In order for them to preserve their system, they resort to destruction of the major opposition movement, which is the PMOI in Iraq. In order to do it, we need the blue helmets. We need monitoring team stationed in Liberty. We need all the 7 demands made by the camp residents to be fulfilled and provided by the Iraqi government. They don't do it themselves. We need each one of us to demand our members of parliament, the Foreign Office in the UK, the Prime Minister Office to pressure Iraqis, to pressure Maliki to do it. And that's the way that we could move forward. Thank you.
The last few days, we've seen many atrocities happening in Camp Ashraf. While much of the international community's focus has been on Syria, the Iranian regime has taken the opportunistic and indeed cynical attempt to commit atrocities in Camp Ashraf. On the 1st of September, 52 people who are under the protection under the Geneva Convention were assaulted, handcuffed and murdered by being shot through the head. This is unacceptable. This is something that I've spoken to the government of the UK about, to our Middle East minister. I've also raised the matter directly with the Prime Minister and have written to him, asking him to support our cause to have UN troops in the camps protecting those people in camp. We cannot allow countries such as Iraq and Iran to continue in this fashion, particularly as they are using Syria as a smokescreen. While people are looking towards Syria, they are committing atrocities and killing our brothers and sisters, and we cannot allow that to happen. We must continue to push, and the UN, to provide the protection that these people not only deserve, but have a legal right under the Geneva Convention. And we must do it soon. This is not the first attack. This is one of many attacks, and I am unprepared to allow it to continue. On behalf of the UK government, and indeed on behalf of the international community, we must take action now. Thank you.
Chair, that is my little gesture of defiance to the Iranian regime and to all those who stand in the way of the entitlements of our heroes, both in Ashraf and in Liberty. I have this on. I have an Ashraf tie, you will have noticed. I could equally well have been wearing the Law Society's tie, since we are with you, totally. We have been for years. There is a motion passed some years ago now supporting this cause. And so here I am, because I speak on behalf of 160,000 solicitors in England and Wales. We are with you. You are with us. We are because you are. With those institutions we wanted so much to believe had the interests of refugees at heart. We will not give up. We will redouble our efforts. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. But I wanted to take this opportunity to add my voice to the condemnation of the atrocity which we've witnessed in Camp Ashraf. No sane, civilised person could tolerate the pictures we've seen of defenceless, innocent people being machine-gunned by armed killers, even as they're lying in hospital beds. The United Nations has a duty to protect these people. It's not fulfilling that duty. And what they need to do now is make it clear that the killers who were armed and had their orders from Khamenei and Malachi, they will be hunted down and they will be brought to justice. So what I say today is simple. The United Nations have three very clear tasks on which they need to engage. The first one is the UN should lead the efforts to have the hostages released. We need to have these people back. We need to know they're safe and sound. The UN has failed them once. They mustn't fail them again. Secondly, the UN must sponsor an internationally supervised investigation into these atrocities so that those responsible can be brought to justice. They must form a blue-helmeted force and use that force to protect the people at Ashraf and Liberty. Nothing else will do. and the world can no longer stand aside and allow these atrocities to continue.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, can I say how sorry I am not to be with you at today's meeting. I know that you'll be talking at length about the atrocities administered by an Iraqi government. First of all, we need to see the release of the 7 hostages taken by the forces of malevolence, 6 of whom were women. The immediate release of those hostages. Secondly, we expect a commitment, complete and honest and simple, to the effect that the Iraqi government will not continue to act like animals in a pit and will desist from attacking unarmed civilians living in Camp Ashraf, to whom I send my very good wishes, my deepest sympathy, and to whom I reassure that we are doing all we can to stop the attacks and to get the United Nations to take action. Let me tell you that I wrote to the United Nations, to the Secretary General, in my role as President of the Committee for Protection of Camp Ashraf and Liberty. And I urged the United Nations to get some blue cap soldiers in, United Nations forces. Can I conclude by wishing you well for the rest of the conference? And can I finish by promising the residents of Camp Ashraf I will continue that fight on their behalf, and I wish them all the very best in what are immensely difficult circumstances.
As Tahir Boumediene was saying earlier, there is no way out of Ashraf. There is no way out of Camp Liberty. And so this is a confined population being attacked by military forces of the government of Iraq. They should have been protected by the US. They should have been protected by the UN and the international community, and they were not. The crimes that were committed in Camp Ashraf were war crimes, crimes against humanity. Finally, I just wanted to add to the voice of others, Lord McGuinness and others, who have made it clear that the release of the 7 hostages is absolutely essential and critical. Mention has been made of the Blue Helmets and the US monitoring team in Camp Liberty. We were told, we've been in meetings with Kobler and others, US officials, telling us how safe Camp Liberty is. Well, if it's so safe, why don't you send 5 of your own people there? Why is it that you're not prepared to have 5 Americans or 5 UN officials or somebody else in the camp if it's so safe? So the basic demands of the Camp Liberty residents must now be met.
But how extraordinary, in all the previous months, there's this endless discussion about what exactly is the international law relating to whether we should go into Syria, whether we should arm the rebels, and lots of discussion between quite eminent international lawyers. But one thing is absolutely clear. There need be no discussion whatsoever about what happened on September the 1st and what happened in all the other times previous to September the 1st. These were absolutely clear. These were crimes against humanity. These were war crimes. These were appalling crimes committed against protected persons under the Geneva Convention. So there must be no discussion about it. This is a crime, and the perpetrators, the Iraqis and the Iranians who are running Iraq, have to be made accountable for this terrible thing. And of course, there is no... There is something that is so wrong with the international... Who are they? What is the international community? What is it all about? What even is the UN system? Now, Taha, he really put his career on the line. He was so brave the first time I heard him speak. And it's absolutely true that it isn't enough anymore just to condemn. We need action. And the first action we need is, the hostages. I can't stop thinking about them every minute. All of them, but 6 of them are women. And we know, you know what they do to women under this terrible, terrible regime. So all our prayers go out to them. All our prayers go out to the survivors. Absolutely agree. Those survivors have to be protected now because they are the witnesses when there is this independent investigation. And of course it's ridiculous to think that it is the Iraqi government who are going to investigate acts that they've actually committed themselves. And we do need those blueberries there. And we do need to have the release of the hostages now, immediately. So I bless you, all of you, on your hunger strike. Maybe we should all go on hunger strike with you. Maybe we could do something. And we think we've got to think very, very quickly about something dramatic that we can do to support all of you hunger strikers. And God bless all those people in Camp Liberty. Thank you.
Since brutal massacre happened in Camp Ashraf on 1st of September, residents of Camp Liberty and Iranian in London, Geneva, Berlin and Ottawa have been on hunger strike. In order to achieve this objective, today marks the 12 days of our hunger strike. We continue our hunger strike until our demands unmet. First, release of 7 hostages who were abducted by Iraqi forces on September 1. Permanent presence of UN Blue Helmets and UNAMI monitoring team at Camp Liberty. Third, providing the minimum security requirement at Liberty that have been brought to the attention of the US and UN.